There is a lake that remembers who you are. It lies beyond the noise, past the fractured hours, untouched by the algorithm of urgency. Its surface is silent, not because there is nothing to say, but because truth doesn't shout, and neither do you, not the real you. You've seen the difference, you've felt the rupture, that flash of heat rising in your chest when someone cuts too deep or too fast, the triggered email, the impulsive fine when nothing is, the silence you weaponize when your heart is loud with pain. You've watched yourself react, not because you wanted to, but because you didn't know you could choose otherwise, and you're not weak for that. This world was built to bypass reflection. You are praised for responding quickly, not wisely. You are trained to speak first, scroll first, defend first. Feel later. They taught you to react like a match, but you were born a mountain, and even now, beneath the noise, you can feel the silence of truth returning, because it's not that you don't know what to do, it's that no one gave you permission to stop before you do it. So here it is. This is your permission to pause, to stop mid-sentence if needed, to breathe before you reply, to remember that reflection is not delay, it is divine command. Napoleon Hill spoke it with quiet certainty. Think and grow rich. Not hustle, not argue, not fire back. Think. The wealth he spoke of wasn't just dollars, it was direction. Inner dominion, the mastery of self before you ever try to master your circumstances. But no one taught you the sacredness of that space, the gap between what happens and how you choose to respond. No one gave you reverence for that gap. No one said that is where the 1% live, not just the wealthy, but the wise, the calm, the clear, the ones who have trained their fire. This isn't about control, it's about command, not of others, of yourself, because the one who reflects before they react is not passive. They are precise. Stillness is not a lack of energy, it is focused force, and you, whether you believe it yet or not, were built for that kind of force. You were built to see now before you speak, to sense before you decide, to know before you move. But you forgot. And that's okay. You forgot. Because the world needed you too distracted to remember. So let this be the remembering. Right now, in the sacred mirror between stimulus and soul, where reaction once ruled and reflection now rises. This is the place, this is the moment. This is where your fire returns to your hands as not to burn, but to build. Welcome back. There's a moment you know too well. It happens so fast it barely has a shape, a tightening in the jaw, a spike in the chest, a heat behind the eyes. And before you know it, the words are already out. The look is already given. The damage already done. This is the burn of the immediate. That split-second sting where your body reacts faster than your soul can speak. And afterward, you replay it. Not once, but 100 times. What you should have said. What you didn't mean, what you didn't stop yourself from doing. Not because you're careless, because you're tired. Tired of carrying the weight of constant emotional fallout. You were told to be quick, but quick cost you something. It cost you presence, it cost you peace, and too often, it cost you people you cared about. Let's tell the truth here. That text you regret sending wasn't you. That silence you used as punishment wasn't power. It was pain dressed up as pride. That argument you replay over and over, it wasn't even about the thing. It was about the pattern, the one you never named, but always lived in. Stimulus. Reaction, trigger, explosion, fear, control. Like a match to dry leaves, your nervous system flares on instinct, and the fire is hot, fast, destructive. But what about the aftermath? You know that place too. It's not loud, it's quiet. It shows up as regret in the middle of the night, as shame that stays behind your eyes long after the apology, as the moment you look in the mirror and whisper, "Why do I always do this?" That's not a flaw in your personality. That's a loop, a groove carved deep into your identity, but not by your own hand. You were conditioned to live inside that loop, trained by childhood environments that rewarded reaction, molded by survival, not reflection. Taught that your only power was in being faster, louder, sharper than the blow, but fast is not power. Fast is panic, And you're not here to panic your way through life, you're here to lead it. Here's what no one told you. Your reactivity isn't proof of your weakness. It's proof that your fire has never been trained, only triggered. And untrained fire will always burn the hand that holds it. But you can feel it, can't you? That desire to not just survive the moment, but command it. To stay calm while others spiral. To respond without flooding. To stand in the heat and not be consumed by it. This is the desire of the 1%. Not just wealth, but inner wealth. Not just discipline, but dominion. Because every reaction you don't control takes something from you. Time, trust, truth. And the cost of just being triggered is heavier than anyone admits. It steals your momentum. It sabotages relationships. It delays divine timing. And worst of all, it erodes the identity of who you know you could be if only you could pause long enough to choose. But this chapter isn't about blame. It's about naming. Because when you name the fire, you can start to tame it. When you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. And when you admit the cost of the immediate, you begin to reclaim the power of the pause. The 1% are not special. They are not smarter. They have not escaped emotion. They have mastered something most never even try. They wait. They reflect. They remember who they are before they speak. Because once the fire leaves your mouth, you don't get it back. But if you hold it, just for one breath longer, you can forge it into something else. Not reaction, but response. Not panic, but power. You've felt the burn. You've lived in the ashes. Now it's time to reclaim the space before the spark. There is a space so small it goes unnoticed by most. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream for your attention. It waits, like breath held between inhale and exhale. But in that invisible pause, empires are built. Relationships are saved. Lives are redirected. This is the space where power lives. Not the loud kind, not the kind that kicks down doors or fights to be right. This is the quiet kind, the kind that changes everything without saying a word. You've touched it before that moment you almost said the thing, but didn't. That breath you took before answering the call. That inner stillness that rose out of nowhere and stopped you from crossing a line. You didn't call it sacred at the time, but it was. It was you remembering your own command. Napoleon Hill wrote it simply, but few understood the depth of it. The mastery of impulse is the foundation of all personal power. Not money, not status, not charm. Impulse. Because whoever controls your reactions controls your reality. And yet no one taught you this. They taught you to hustle, to defend, to speak fast and think later. They rewarded urgency, but urgency without reflection is spiritual bankruptcy. So let's make this plain. There are only two ways to live, reactive or reflective. Reactive living is loud. It needs to be first. It needs to be right. It feeds off external circumstances, constantly bouncing from stimulus to stimulus like a pinball trapped in someone else's game. But reflective living, it's deliberate. It pauses not out of fear, but authority. It understands that speed without direction is a circle, not a path. The reactive life says, I must respond right now. The reflective life asks, is this worthy of my energy? And in that question, you reclaim yourself. You slow down. Not to avoid the moment, but to own it completely. Because here is the hidden truth. The longer you can dwell in that space between what happens and what you do, the more powerful you become. Why? Because that's where your true self speaks. Not the wounded part, not the ego, not the echo of your past. But the part of you that sees the whole picture and chooses not from fear but from wisdom. This is the space where the 1% live. Not just the financially rich, but the emotionally wealthy, the spiritually disciplined, the ones who move through chaos without letting it move through them. They are not lucky, they are not immune. They have trained for the pause. They have learned to lengthen the moment between lightning and thunder, between emotion and expression, between heat and action. And in doing so, they've turned reaction into response, impulse into intention, instinct into insight. This is your inheritance too. But it will feel unfamiliar at first because silence can be terrifying to those who've only known noise. Stillness can feel like failure in a culture obsessed with motion. Waiting can feel weak when the world confuses loudness with leadership. But in that space, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself. You find the version of you that doesn't yell, doesn't panic, doesn't rush to win a battle that isn't even worth fighting. You find the part of you that leads from knowing, not proving. This is what it means to think and grow rich. To think, not just intellectually, but spiritually. To enter the 3D space between what triggered you and what you'll become because of it. To know that power isn't in how quickly you act, but in how deeply you choose. So the next time you feel the fire rising, pause. Not to suppress, not to retreat, but to command. You are not here to be a slave to your surroundings. You are here to rule your inner world, and in doing so, reshape the outer one. Let this be the beginning of that rule. Let this be the moment you remember. Power doesn't chase, it waits, it watches, and then it moves with precision. You've always carried that power. It's been waiting in the gap, between breath in and breath out. Now it's yours to claim. Before the words, before the gesture, before the decision, the reply, the scroll, the sigh, the fix, there is a pause. Small enough to miss. Sacred. Enough to remake your life. Most will never find it, because most never look. They don't think there's anything to do in a pause, no task to complete, no reward to chase, no validation to earn. But the 1%, they know better. They know the pause is not empty. It is alive. It is where chaos surrenders to clarity, where fear runs out of breath, where identity steps forward, quiet and undeniable. This is the sacred pause, not a productivity tactic, not a stress hack, a spiritual threshold. And once you learn to cross it, everything changes. So here it is, a ritual, simple, still, yours. The ritual of the sacred pause. Step 1, hand to heart. Whenever the fire rises, before you speak, before you move, place your hand over your chest, not as a dramatic gesture, but as a signal. I am here, I am home. Let your body remember, you are not a machine, you are not a reaction. You are a presence, and your presence is command. Step 2, breathe once slowly, not to calm down, but to return. Inhale, deep and deliberate. Exhale, without rushing. This is not escape. This is embodiment. This is how you stretch the space between trigger and truth. The longer you dwell here, the more power you collect. This breath is your throne. Step 3, ask the inner question. Not, what do I feel, but what would my highest self choose here? The answer may come in a whisper, a feeling, a single word. Trust it. If silence answers, trust that too. Not every fire needs to be fed. You may be thinking, that's it? Yes, that's everything. Because this ritual doesn't change the world around you. It changes the world within you. And once your inner world shifts, the outer can't help but follow. Here's the deeper truth. The sacred pause is the womb of creation. Every masterful response was born there. Every aligned decision, every word that healed instead of harmed. It's where forgiveness begins, where clarity speaks, where wealth becomes inevitable, because you are no longer negotiating with chaos, and yet you won't always want to pause. Sometimes the fire will feel urgent. You'll want to shout, prove, push back. You'll tell yourself it's justified, and maybe it is. But that's not the question anymore. The question is, will this response build the life I say I want? And if it won't, wait, pause, return to the breath, the candle, the stillness, because you can't build a kingdom with scattered bricks. You must choose deliberately, and the sacred pause is where that choosing begins. Practice this before the next fire comes, not during, not after. Practice when it's quiet, when no one's watching. When you're alone in the dark and the world is still. That's how power becomes presence. Not through dramatic declarations, but through daily reverence. Remember, the candle doesn't chase darkness. It holds its flame, and the room changes. Around it, so do you. You don't chase control, you don't chase approval, you don't chase resolution. You hold the pause and everything else realigns. There comes a point in the journey where it's no longer about techniques, it's about truth. And here is one that may unsettle you, but it will also set you free. You were never meant to be reactionary. That frantic voice inside, the one that jumps to conclusions, rushes to fix, lashes to protect, withdraws to punish, that's not you, that's not your nature. That's your training. You were trained to be reactive, not by one person, but by a pattern, a culture that rewarded speed over depth, a family that confused silence with safety, a world that taught you to guard, to scan, to brace, before anything else. So let's be honest, you didn't wake up one day impulsive. You adapted. You adapted to chaos. You adapted to unsafety. You adapted to feeling unseen and needing to do something fast to reclaim a sense of power. But here's the truth that cracks the whole cycle wide open. Adaptation is not identity. Just because you learned to react doesn't mean you were born reactive. You are not the anger. You are not the sarcasm. You are not the avoidance. You are not the over-explaining. You are not the meltdown, the shutdown, the spiral. Those are shadows of survival. But your essence is sovereign, and it's time you came back to the throne. Not a throne of ego, but of clarity. The throne of the one who chooses, not to dominate others, but to command self. Because if you don't command your identity, the world will assign you one, and it will be based on your worst moments. You're so sensitive. You always overreact. You never think before you speak. You're just dramatic. These are not descriptions. They are chains, spoken often enough. They sink into your wiring. And then you start living them, but not anymore, because you're not here to fit the role they wrote for you. You're here to return to the one you were before the performance, before the masks, before the defense mechanisms, before you confused reaction with power. That version of you, the calm one, the clear one, the one who knows when to speak and when to wait, that one never left. It was buried, not broken. And now, piece by piece, as you remember, close your eyes just for a moment. See yourself, not as you've been, but as you actually are. You sit on a throne that cannot be shaken. You are still, but not passive. You are kind, but not soft. You are aware, but not reactive. People come to you with noise, and it does not enter you. Conflict arises, and you see through it like clear water. Opportunity appears, and you wait for alignment before you act. You are no longer ruled by how you've always been. You move as someone who knows who they are. That is identity. Not a costume, but a core. And from that core, everything flows. Your tone softens without losing strength. Your presence quiets rooms without raising your voice. Your decisions no longer come from fear, but from deep-rooted faith. This is not effort. This is essence, because the real you doesn't live in panic. The real you lives in power. You are not a reaction. You are a response. You are not a product of what happened. You are a steward of what comes next, and every pause you practice is a vote for that identity. Not just a moment of discipline, but a moment of remembrance. You don't need to become the 1%. You already are. You've just been reacting like the 99, but not anymore. The throne is still warm. The crown still fits. The kingdom still waits. It's time to sit back down in yourself, not to perform, to reign. The world tells you to hurry. Decide now. Post now. Speak up now, or you'll miss your chance. It pressures you to act with urgency, as if urgency were proof of power. But real power doesn't rush. It waits. It watches. It moves when truth says move, not fear. This is the discipline of divine timing. It is not passive. It is not lazy. It is the deepest kind of faith, the kind that knows everything is already aligned, if you don't disturb it. Imagine an hourglass. The sand doesn't fall faster when you stare. It doesn't fall slower when you worry. It falls at its pace. And your only job is to honor the rhythm. That's divine timing. And it cannot be accessed through panic, only through presence. You see, when you learn to reflect before you react, you don't just avoid mistakes. You unlock momentum. Because most of what people call bad timing is just misaligned action. They spoke too soon. They quit too fast. They moved too late. They answered the wrong voice inside, and the one fueled by emotion, not insight. But you are learning to wait on the signal. You are becoming fluent in the silence. You can feel the difference now, can't you? The difference between forced and fluid. Between now because I'm scared and now because it's time. This is what separates the reactive from the rare. The rare know. What is meant for me doesn't need to be chased, only received when I am ready, and readiness comes through reflection. Here's how divine timing works. You pause, not to delays but to listen. You wait for clarity, not for comfort, not for perfection, but for inner alignment. You act without flinch, because the timing is no longer external, it's known. This is not magic, this is maturity. The rare kind that creates momentum you can trust, because when you move too fast, you spend more time cleaning up than creating. You apologize more than you build. You lose energy trying to recover what wasn't ready, but when you move in divine time, there's no cleanup, no backtracking, only forward, steady, aligned. You don't waste your fire, you wield it. This is why reflection isn't just emotional hygiene, it's strategic command. The most powerful people in the world aren't the fastest, they're the most aligned. They know when to strike and when to stay still as a mountain. They don't jump at the first opportunity. They move when the right one emerges, and they are ready to meet it because they've done the inner work. That's you now. You don't scramble, you don't fumble, you pause, you prepare, you position. Because purpose isn't found in a frenzy. It's awakened through discipline. Let me remind you of something you forgot while rushing. You are not behind, you're not late. You didn't miss it. You didn't ruin it. You're just now learning to hear the clock that ticks within you, not the one they sold you. And when you begin to live by that clock, your relationships feel different. Your decisions feel sharper. Your days stretch wider. You no longer chase because you know. Know what? That what's for you will recognize you. Not the anxious version, not the reactive version, but the anchored one. The one who reflects before responding. The one who chooses timing over tension. The one who trusts the hourglass more than the stopwatch. Because you're not here to scramble your way into greatness. You're here to walk in it, fully prepared. And preparation doesn't always look like doing more. Sometimes it looks like waiting, wisely, because divine timing does not reward noise, it rewards alignment. And now that you've reclaimed the sacred pause, everything can arrive on time. You will walk through the same world, the same interruptions. The same temptations to snap, scroll, defend, disappear. The same people pushing buttons you didn't install, man, but still feel every time they're pressed. But you will not walk it the same way, because now you carry the code. Not as a concept, but as command. Not as theory, but as rhythm. In your bones, you've seen the cost of reaction. You've felt the weight of regret. You've tasted the emptiness of being right but not whole. And still, you survived. But now, you remember. You remember the pause is not absence. It is presence in its most disciplined form. It is the line between the life you inherited and the one you now build. And here, in this silence that builds empires, you begin again. You do not owe the world your immediacy. You owe it your integrity. You do not need to explain every quiet choice. The ones who matter will feel the shift, even if they don't understand it. You do not need to justify your reflection. It speaks louder than anything urgency ever screamed. Let them call it hesitation. Let them call it softness. You know better now. It is design. It is discipline. It is divine timing made visible through you, because your pause is not empty. It is full of who you are becoming. And who is that? The one who holds the flame but no longer burns the bridge. The one who stills the moment and rewrites the pattern. The one who leads from within, not from reaction, but revelation. This is not effort. This is identity. And now that you've tasted it, you can never go back. You'll feel it in your chest when you try. You'll hear it in your breath before your mouth opens. You'll sense it in the space between the trigger and your truth. That's not hesitation. That's not second guessing. That's you arriving. And the world won't always understand it, but your future will. It will rise to meet this version of you. The one who no longer confuses noise with necessity. The one who reflects before reacting. The one who builds, slowly, quietly, unshakably. Because empires are not built by the loud, they are built by the anchored, and you now are anchored. So go back into the world, not with more effort, but with more evidence of who you now are. And if you ever feel lost again, return to the candle, return to the pause, return to the mountain above the storm, and remember, you've always carried the code. Now you have the key. Use it.